Blessed are the meek. When it comes to using the word meek, people believe that the word meek is a very weak word, and indeed it does rhyme with weak, but we are going to see that the greatest challenge in this life is persons exercising and exhibiting self-control. And so the meek person is the person who knows by the grace of God how to control the impulses of his mouth, how to control the impulses of his mind, how to restrain the impetuous spirit, and how to behave himself wisely, how to exercise wisdom and do diligence and be able to wisely and judiciously weigh situations and measure and meter their personal responses to the various stimuli that they interact with on a daily basis that may draw the unsavory things that exist in their characters out for their embarrassment. And so the meek person is the person who is self-possessed and who is under the control of a higher principle and of a higher power. And we're going to understand that meek does not mean weak. If Alexander the Great was meek, he would not have died from drunken debauchery. He conquered the entire world, but he could not conquer himself. And so that was a travesty. So because a person is meek, it does not mean that they would not be able to ascend the heights of greatness. It means that because of their meekness, they can easily ascend the heights of greatness in this world and in the world to come, because it makes them wise, beloved. So these are the principles that we need to understand. But what does it mean when Christ says in Matthew chapter 5 verse 5, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth"? And Christ tells you who is going to inherit the earth. So if you are not meek, you will never inherit the earth. And so we must come to this understanding today, because if we are going to inherit the earth in the world to come, we must practice meekness here and now, because the entire population of the planet will all be meek. These are they that will enter not only into heaven, but these are they who will populate the newly recreated world. And this is one of the travesties of Christianity. You meet very many Christians who are full of a knowledge and an understanding of God's will and His word and a doctrine, but they are full of knowledge, but their character is not meek. And this is a travesty, beloved. When you meet people who are very committed, who are dedicated and faithful to their religious organizations, their denominations, but they are not meek, beloved. Our challenge as Christians is to be like Jesus. This is our challenge. And so the doctrine, the dedication, the commitment, these things are necessary, but the real transformation must occur not simply in our intellects, but in our characters, in our dispositions, in our personalities. We must be meek, for if we are not meek, we will lose our inheritance. And if we lose our inheritance, it means we have no place, and we do not fit in heaven, we do not fit in earth. We cannot afford to lose our inheritance. So beloved, the challenge to your soul today is make a decision to understand what meekness is. Take away the unfounded fears that the devil has overlaid over the word, that word meek, to make you feel as though that word meek means to be weak. And I've heard people say no, they don't want to be humble, because being humble means that you are a fool. So let us take a look then at two characters who are meek, and let us take a look then at the value of being meek, so that the fears that are unfounded, that God has not given you regarding understanding what meekness is, that those fears can be cast aside and destroyed by the facts of God's word. And in Numbers chapter 12, verse 3 to 8, it says, Now the man Moses was very meek above all the men which were upon the face of the earth. And we must understand that Moses was one of the greatest leaders that ever trod the earth to lead the people of Israel out of Egyptian bondage at the direction of God and lead them into the promised land, and to lead these people, these at that time about 2 million people, through the wilderness and try to build their faith in God and to tolerate the murmuring, the complaining. Beloved, a weak person cannot lead 2 million people. A weak person cannot stand his ground, control his self, control their responses. A weak person is not the one who engages with such a large scale of human beings and still maintain their integrity, their relationship with God, and still maintain the value of their personal uniqueness, beloved. Because one of the greatest challenges in this world is you being the person that God created you to be, and not allow society or vast numbers of people existing in this world and their differing and varying opinions to change you and to move you from who God created you to be. So Moses was meek, and Moses died as being Moses. And the one instance where he breached his personality, where he breached the principles of his character and responded in anger, it cost him. And so, but nevertheless, regardless of that one infraction, beloved, he still was entered into the gates of heaven because of who he was as a meek person, following the designs, following the direction of God. And so this Moses, he was very meek above all the men which were upon the face of the earth. And so God came down in the pillar of cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle, and he spoke to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam in this instance, because Aaron and Miriam had come to complain against Moses and telling him that God speaks to them as much as he speaks to him as well. And what Aaron and Miriam did not understand is that whom God gives much, he expects much. And they thought that their calling in life was on equality to Moses' calling in life. But Moses was a man who hungered and thirsted after righteousness. Moses expected much from God, and therefore God gave him much. And so Moses had a different level of energy in his relationship with God, and God responded to Moses in kind and revealed himself personally to Moses. Moses was not dissuaded by the times where we speak to God and it seems as though he's not listening, he's not there, or he does not care. Moses was never dissuaded by those apparent circumstances in life. Moses held firm and fast to his faith in God. Moses expected God to treat him at a different level. Moses expected God to treat him in a personal fashion, and his meekness, his undeniable, indomitable faith would not move from that position, and he remained there in peace and in self-possession where his relationship with God is. And so God came and he spoke to Aaron and Miriam, and he says, Hear now my words, if there be a prophet among you, I, the Lord, will make myself known unto him in a vision, and will speak unto him in a dream. My servant Moses is not so, who is faithful in all mine house. And so God identifies to Aaron and Miriam that because Moses was faithful to him, he revealed himself to Moses personally, this is what it means to be meek. And Aaron and Miriam were not being meek in this particular instance because they allowed pride to come up in their heart, and it caused them to fall, and it caused Miriam to receive leprosy. So there is an indomitable strength in meekness, and there is a reward by God for meekness. And so God is identifying to them, I will speak to Moses face to face. He will behold me. I will not speak to him in dark speeches. As it says, my servant Moses is not so, who is faithful in all my house. With him will I speak mouth to mouth, even apparently, and not in dark speeches. And the similitude of the Lord shall he behold. Wherefore then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? When you are meek, God stands up for you. When you are meek, God stands by your side. When you are meek, you have the strength of heaven on your side and in your corner. Notice in Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 18, and this is God speaking. I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren like unto thee. And he's talking to Moses, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. And so God is identifying that Christ is going to be just like Moses, and the common characteristic between Christ and Moses was meekness. And this is why he's saying, I am going to raise up to the children of Israel a prophet from among them, just like you are, Moses, and I will put my words in his mouth, just as I have put my words in your mouth to speak to Pharaoh, and he shall speak unto them all that I command him. And it shall come to pass that whosoever will not hearken unto my words, which he shall speak in my name, I will require it of him. And so Moses, who was one of the greatest leaders of men, he was a type of Christ. He prefigured Christ, and this came from the mouth of God. And so we have two characteristics of two individuals. We have the same characteristics contained within two separate individuals in the history of this world who were meek, who accomplished great things. So do not allow the devil to fool you, to make you believe that if you are meek, you will not be able to accomplish anything. No, beloved, it is not so. That is not real. And this is why in Matthew chapter 11 verse 29 it says, take my yoke upon you and learn of me. And Christ is saying, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. The reason why many of us do not find rest is because we are not taking the yoke of God upon us, and we are not consenting to be as he would have us to be, which is to be meek, because we have been deceived into thinking that being meek means to be weak. But when we are meek, we accomplish great things, just as Christ accomplished great things, just as Moses accomplished great things. Because when you are meek, you exercise self-control, you are self-possessed, you are focused, your energies go in the right direction and not in the wrong direction. You are not easily offended, you are not easily moved. When you are meek, you are not walked over and taken for granted, because the children of Israel, they did not walk over Moses. Moses was in command, Moses was in control, that even when they did wrong, his heart was so full of compassion, his heart was so full of the Spirit of God, that he begged God to have mercy upon them, to give them another chance. So he was always the most compassionate, the most merciful person. And so these are virtues, these are not weaknesses, beloved. And in Matthew chapter 21, Christ again identifies in verse 5 and he repeats the prophecy of Isaiah. Tell ye the daughter of Zion, behold, thy king cometh unto thee meek, and sitting upon an ass, and a colt the foal of an ass. So here you have Christ, the King of the universe, the King of the glory, King of kings. Here you have a king who is meek. And so when you are meek, beloved, when you are meek as a Christian, you are exercising your kingly, your queenly, this position of royalty, because your King of Kings, Jesus, who he is also meek. And there is a reward, there is a value of being meek. And in Psalms 25 verse 10 it says, the meek will he guide in judgment, and the meek will he teach his way. And in Psalm 76 verse 9 it says, when God arose to judgment to save all the meek of the earth. And so God saves the meek, and he stands up for those who are meek. He guides the meek in judgment, and he teaches the meek his way. Beloved, there is a value to being meek. And do not allow the devil to deceive you into thinking that being meek means to be weak. This is the Word of Life with Andre Knight.